Hi, I'm Ben Neill. Welcome to the Diffusing Music podcast, where I explore the democratization of music through new technologies with a series of innovative guests. In the final chapter of my book, I discuss how the musical artists of the future will very likely not just be concerned with creating their own musical masterpieces for others to listen to passively, but will also be engaged with creating ways to shape and mold the emerging mass creativity that we see today, with music becoming more and more participatory. My guest today, Tobi Hunke, also known as the Ableton Drummer, is a fantastic example of this new kind of hybrid artist technologist. Tobi is a drummer who has developed a series of 150 plugins for Ableton Live that enhance the ability to perform with the software. Here's an example of him playing using some of his own custom plugins. Today, I'm really happy to be speaking with Tobi Hunke, also known as the Ableton Drummer. He's a musician, technologist, and I've been fortunate enough to have Tobi develop a few custom devices for me, which have become really essential parts of my live performance set. And I'm just very excited to get a chance to talk to him about his work today. So thanks so much for joining me, Tobi.
Thanks for having me, Ben. So nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Finally,
great to meet you too.
Oh.
So I guess to start, can you just talk a little bit about your personal history? And I know you are obviously a musician, but you're combining these roles of being a musician, a performer, and then someone who develops technologies for other musicians. And this is really one of the primary things that I am interested in my book, is that I see this kind of role as being more and more important in the future. So can you just give us a sense of your trajectory and how those things intertwined?
Yes, so it started with getting a trumpet when I was 6 years old. My dad was a trumpet teacher, so that's where the whole music journey or making music journey started. I then got drumming lessons, piano lessons, and then I had this time of like teenage rebellion, F the system and this stuff. And I was playing in bands, and mainly in punk bands, and played mainly drums, but a little bit of trumpet and some ska punk bands there as well. We did the whole DIY punk thing, and that's back in the days where, and that's like your topic, where you had to create your own distribution system. You needed to have your own scenes because it was really difficult to just get into the shops. And even if you were in the shops, you needed distributing music was a lot of gatekeeping business. Then I started to study music I'm from Germany. I started studying music in Bristol in the UK, in England. And that is when the whole MySpace moment happened, which is maybe kind of a comparison to people your age or being a little bit older, when punk was happening, obviously to some degrees, when it comes to things like distribution and being able to connect directly or making music directly for the people you wanted to and connect to those people directly. So I think MySpace is like it was around then, and it was really exciting because when I was studying, a lot of my tutors and teachers were kind of from the old school business and were like, yeah, I was an A&R for Sony and blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't interested in all that stuff because I thought like, well, that's kind of like a dinosaur's business model. And I have to say I got proved right. So that was kind of the journey. And then I came back to Germany, played in bands more. Obviously, I was playing in bands all the time. Started to do or getting more into electronic music. And that's where I got connected with Ableton Live, using Ableton Live for, 15 years-ish now. And I always had the issues, or there were always little things where I wanted to to, how do you say, like, oh, there were some things not possible in Ableton Live and still not are. And that was the need which got me started to getting into Max for Live and creating as a non-programmer. Coming from musician perspective, Max for Live was a great opportunity for me to quickly find ways to solve problems for things I wanted to do musically, starting for me, and then it became a whole business because I'm now doing this for a lot of people and have a release around 150 devices and plus doing a lot of custom works for artists who are performing and finding the ways to make things happen.
So you mentioned you went to school in Bristol. What was your training? Were you trained as a percussionist, or did you study music technology there as well?
No, that was a performing musicians thing, and then later on performings and composing. So it was mainly on drums, and then the composing part was using Logic a little bit, and we had different things like creating music for advertising and different subjects like that. Yeah.
Well, Bristol is such an incredible hotbed of great electronic music, from Massive Attack and drum and bass and everything. You must have been around there when a lot of that was going on, right? Or a little later, I guess.
A little later. I was there about 2005 to 2009. Trip hop was happening. Still happening, but it was, I guess, like around 10 years
10 years
before.
earlier. Yeah.
But dubstep was happening at that time, for example. So, and it's just like the whole vibe of people are being so serious about music. It's like you're getting invited to a house party and people are like, who's playing? Digital or analog? Like vinyl or digital? Like people are really serious about music. And it was great for me because in Germany, it's kind of like when you say like, oh, what do you do? Yeah, I do music. But what do you do like for a living? And in Bristol or in the UK, it's more like, you are, back in the days, it was more like, hey, what do you do? Yeah, I do music. Oh, are you signed already? You know, like people.
I wonder if that's still true. I mean, it seems like in a lot of ways people aren't so, oh, you're a musician. Oh, yeah, you and everybody else. It's interesting. I actually went and saw Goldie a few nights ago.
Wow.
He was performing in New York, and there was another musician opening up for him, Takuya Nakamura. I actually wasn't familiar with him, but he also plays trumpet. He's a DJ, electronic musician, and plays trumpet.
Nice.
And what was interesting was that both of them were doing drum and bass, straight up drum and bass, obviously, but with live drummers. And Goldie had 2 live drummers up there with him playing acoustic sets.
Yes.
The other guy had a guy playing pads. I actually kind of enjoyed the pads performance more because I felt like the sonorities were kind of more what we're used to hearing. But again, I remember people kind of trying to do live drum and bass for quite some time, and it was always touch and go, right? But it was interesting to see that it now, 30 years later, after it emerged, that people have really learned how to play it. So I've done a few of these interviews, and it seems this is a bit of a common thread that I'm really fascinated by, which is that, as you just mentioned, you kind of started out, I guess, creating these devices for your own use, right? You found limitations within Ableton, and then how did you make that transition from being someone who's just making things for yourself, and also how did you, I mean, Max for Live, okay, it's accessible, but it's not nothing to learn how to create these plugins and make them robust enough to really use in live performance. How did you make that transition?
Good question. I don't know. I think it was just necessary to do. And then I think one big part here was that people were so interested in that really motivated me to dive deeper and create more and stuff. And obviously, like, one thing which connects the story of you seeing Goldie, for example, one of his drummers, I guess Adam is still touring with him, Adam Betts. He's an amazing drummer, great energy, and he has a solo project called Colossal Squid, where he is triggering melodies from his drum kit. And I developed a device for that called the Melody Trigger. So it's just very, like, I always had this dream to be able to do this, and there were other people already doing this to some extent, and there is a whole history of that. But I wanted to be able to do this live and have a workflow, which was my workflow. And so obviously when you spend like, I probably spent about, don't know, 5 months developing it, and then it's there, and then obviously it makes sense to give it to other people or to sell it as well to other people. And the interest was like really big, and I was able to connect with people like Adam through that and other drummers all around the world out of my small student town in Germany from my bedroom. And then there are people from Nashville writing you, wow, I like your shit, like come over or visit me. So yeah, I think.
But you didn't really have so much of a background in programming. You weren't really a programmer, yeah.
Zero.
But were you doing electronic music, just making beats and things, or you were primarily focused on playing live drums, primarily?
Well, I started to produce music like when I got introduced to Ableton Live. I had a live drum and bass thing where I was playing vibraphone, a little bit of electronic drums, and doing like a whole live performance with some visuals as well. And then I produced for a band where I was the drummer and just writing the whole stuff. So it was kind of like the possibility to play this kind of electronic music with live instruments plus Ableton Live. So that's how I was using Ableton Live. And then
I know it seems like more and more people are using it as a primary production platform now. I'm using it more and more because my live performance is more what I'm recording. So,
yes, okay.
But I actually don't find Ableton, like the arrange view, to be so satisfying to work with sometimes. But it's interesting. Of course, one of the things that I really focus on in the book is this superabundance of music that comes out of the accessibility of all this technology. And as you mentioned, the accessibility of the distribution, which, as you mentioned, punk rock. I mean, I really got my start as a creative musician in the punk new wave scene. That was kind of the way that I entered into it, and working with my instrument, the mutant trumpet. But I wonder, it feels like now live performance in a way has it's certainly taken on more value in terms of economics. I mean, we see that the live side of the music industry continues to grow, and I mean, a lot of that growth is at the top of the industry where ticket prices are going higher and higher. But I feel like live performance, being able to perform live, and particularly and with what you do and the kinds of things you create, being able to improvise, I think, with electronics, to me, it is really important. Some of the custom things that you've done for me have been, where I would just like run up against a wall, and I have not had the skill to be able to, create my own Max for Live plugins. So I really admire your ability to do that. And how did you build up that network? You said you found a lot of interest, I guess, just mainly through social media and online means. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it started as mainly when Facebook was still a thing. Still is, but there are so many different networks now. So, and I was just putting out like, that's a nice idea, just put it out, and then posting it in Facebook groups, and started my own Facebook group, which is kind of dying out, but you will find it still under Ableton Drummer. And now it's a lot of my connections are happening via email at the moment, to be honest. So people like you having a question, and I developed this chatbot as well, which I just put all my resources in. So it's a quick and easy and instant way for people to get answers or to look for maybe a solution which I already created. The Tobi bot, it's like it's great for my stuff. It's maybe not as great for like broader Ableton Live music production stuff because it's not as focused on this. It's focused on my resources and knowledge.
How much are you still focused on performing and creating your own music now? Have you totally swung more toward the technological side, or are you still active artistically?
I'm not that active artistically at the moment, so it's just developed to a full-time thing. And it's kind of feels like all my creative energy is going into that thing. And just the last 3 days, I had this idea on working on something, and I just worked till 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's the same feeling like working on a song or working on a piece or working on something. So, but it's kind of like I'm feeling like I want to step back a little from that, but on the same time, it's kind of like maybe a business decision somewhere where it's kind of like, okay, it is fun for me. It makes sense to do this at the moment because probably in 2 years we will have a lot of AI and other solutions which can create this much easier.
Well, I certainly don't think one is better than the other. I mean, as a matter of fact, it's kind of the way I end the book. I really see the artist of the future as being someone who does kind of what you do, in a sense that I don't think it's really enough to just sit around and say, okay, I'm going to make my masterpiece that everybody's going to passively listen to. I think as music becomes more and more participatory, which I believe it will continue to do, the really leading edge of creativity, I think, is going to be people who come up with ways of shaping that all of that creativity that's going on out there. And you're just such a great example of that, because when we're using your devices, you are shaping or kind of guiding that creativity. And I think that's really powerful. I think it's something that maybe people haven't quite connected with yet. We still think about these things as being kind of separate.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a musician, I'm a programmer, but I think that as we go on more and more, that's just going to be more and more important. How much of your work would you say is more for private individuals compared to just the products that you've got available that people can just purchase? And I'll certainly include links to your site and everything for people to do that. Yeah.
I can't really say. I mean, I would say it's kind of like 50-50
Okay.
from the perspective of what I'm spending time on. So there are some quite big artists I do stuff for regularly. And before everyone goes on tour in like around April, May, like from February starting on, there's a lot of work for those particular artists. And then it's more like, yeah, if things are coming up and like people are writing me, I try to get back as quick as I can. On the same side, I'm getting so many emails that I like kind of like, please ask the Tobi bot first. Then if you don't find an answer, come to me, or that direction. But yeah, I wanted to say, I totally agree to like future musician is kind of like you are creating your own instruments, if that does make sense, like with all that technology, computer, it's not like this is a drum, or this is a drum kit, and this is a drum kit, oh, they are drummers. It's kind of like, no, they are using those things in completely different ways. And if you have technology in between, or yeah. So I think that's happening on one side. On the other side, I would say a lot of people will get into music production and kind of stick to the mainstream and try to replicate what they already know or already like, which is totally fine, and like whatever people want to do with their time and making music, they should do it. But I think in our kind of niche, it's like when you think about performance, you want to express yourself and you don't want to think about like, how do I change a preset? I want this to be automated, for example. I don't want to like, I want it to feel like human interacting when I play with Ableton Live. I don't want to look at it. I don't want things like that. And that's very individual of what you need. And you're trying what you want, what you need to be creative, to stay in the flow. And this is kind of like people are getting more and more into this. Hey, you can do it like that, or you can do it like that. What fits for you makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's really true. And I think also, speaking of AI, in terms of the kind of production of like what you just described, things that are kind of more mainstream or slightly more predictable, I think that's where AI may really have its biggest impact. But on the other hand, I do feel like what we're talking about here may actually increase in value, where it will become so easy to make a house track. I mean, it already kind of is.
Yeah, it is.
I remember reading something Robert Henke wrote a few years ago saying, well, with AI, you're never going to really need to work that hard on, getting a kick drum sound anymore. But what you're talking about, and of course, I mean, that's been my whole lifelong project, is to create my own instrument that would be something where I would be able to express my own creativity. But frankly, a lot of people would look at it sometimes and say, well, why the hell would you want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think now it's becoming something that we see is much more common, and there's more of a demand for it. So yeah, what else? What do you have on the horizon? Anything? Any projects that you're particularly excited about? New coming things, or just even more generally, where you see things going in terms of your development of your products and devices?
There's going to be a lot of new stuff coming out soon. I already made the videos, and I need an AI. I need a bot who can explain my devices, because that's the biggest work, and that's not work which feels like work. The whole programming and finding solutions and developing a design a UI, and that's all fun. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like writing songs with a band in the rehearsal space. But then when it's kind of like, oh, we play the shows, we have to get there, we have to pack up and all that stuff, it's kind of like, I now have to export it. I have to do a video. I have to do a video. I have to do an article. I have to post the links. The whole marketing bollocks is like, but I've done a few things there already. So if people or listeners are interested, newsletters, my email newsletters are always a good way to stay informed. And yeah, there is some more looping stuff I just worked on for the Ableton looper, some specific things.
No, I was just checking out your looper device that enables you to do the combination of audio and MIDI looping,
yes,
which is really very, very powerful. But you're just a one-person operation. You don't have like a team that you work with to help you with these things, or do you? Or
I have one friend who I started to give some of this marketing stuff handed over, and as well just being able to talk with someone about like where you're at or what you're planning helps to just communicate and speak it out loud, and just being able. So this is one person, a few hours a month, like I'm paying for. But yeah, that's mainly my thing, and I decide the directions, and there is no big pressure on like if I don't have to do it, I don't have to do it. It's like, yeah,
that's great. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you, and everybody should definitely check out abletondrummer.com and get in there and explore these devices, which I'll guarantee will change your whole approach to Ableton. Thanks so much, Tobi.
Thanks so much, Ben.